Okay, so now we're going to yourself, Rich, for the final article. This is from the 42.ie, and the headline is, does Irish rugby have enough space for the talent it's producing, by Murray Kinsella.
And what an awesome problem to have. At the end of the day, that's what it is. It's an interesting article, interesting in the sense that, quite apart from the obvious, which is the fact that the amount of talent that is out there, but it's how you accommodate all that talent. The suggestion that there should be a fifth team in Ireland, I don't think that'll wash, because there is an awful lot of provincial, rightly so, rivalry, and that's what keeps the teams honest. And which province do you split, or do you split them all? Do you split all four into one and just have this little chunk in the Midlands somewhere? Yes,
I wonder which province the majority would want to split.
well, yeah.
Can't even work out.
well, duh. So it's there was also this suggestion of buying an English Premiership club, and then funneling or channeling those players through there. I clearly haven't got the solution. I'm not paid the mega bucks that News Before is, but what I think ought to happen is you need to accommodate these players, otherwise they will go. And you've got the Healy suggestion, although the Healy issue at the moment with moving off to Scotland. I think the solution to this is actually quite simple, and the simplicity of it is that you allow the players to play abroad, even though they're centrally contracted. There is precedent for this. Johnny played for Ireland when he was playing for Racing. So you need to allow them to come back and play for the national team. What's wrong with playing for Toulouse, Toulon, Saracens even, and coming back to play for Ireland? There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of teams, as in national teams, seem to have this hang up over this. And I obviously foresee some of the issues, like the amount of minutes the players play, how all of these issues, and these issues have to be thought out properly. And then you have the club v country debate that the English have, that the French have. How is that accommodated? Is it because I pay X amount of percentage of their wages that it allows me to tell you, whoever, Leicester Tigers, so and so is only going to play this match, and this match? You need to have that. You need to have that discussion. A priori, any of this is put into motion. I really don't see a fifth province. I don't see the purchase of a club at all. The only solution that I see, and I'm sure there are people who know infinitely far more about rugby than I will ever do, will come up with a better idea. But the only solution that I see is allowing players who play abroad to be eligible for selection for the national team. It can only make them better. In my personal opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the situation we have now is it grew to this situation from how Ireland dealt with the transition to professional rugby. We went from clubs into provincial. We gave them the resources to become professional teams. We let them grow, but it got to a stage where there's only 4 provinces in the island, which means only 4 teams. But as the amount of players grew, I mean, obviously it gets to a stage. If it gets to a stage where players are having to leave because there's no possibility of test rugby, it means the system's working, but it means we've created a box that we have to start thinking outside of to get the solutions. What do you think, Hugo?
I was just going to say, as Richard was talking there and talking about kind of the players going away, I understand the issue is we lose control, which is, you understand. So if you were to say, I know Sexton had the legs run off when he was in France and he was flying back and forth during that Six Nations. It wasn't great for him, wasn't great for us. But if we were to say to someone like Ben Healy, right, okay, let's say we say to him, look, you want to leave, but there's a starting spot up north, for example. I know he said he wants to stay in Munster, but just to offer that to him. So he's got first team ball here and he stays in the system. Or we say to him, listen, Glasgow or Edinburgh, wherever he goes, if this was to work, he wouldn't necessarily have to go there. He's there because of his Scottish heritage. But anywhere, and say, look, we will pay a quarter of his salary. And obviously you guys play a lot more games than we do. So he's going to play more minutes than he would at Munster, but he can't play the full season. We need him for X, Y, and Z. He's cheaper for you because we're paying a quarter of his salary. You know, try and build it that way so that we keep Healy, for example, in the ecosystem of Irish rugby, because he basically has said, look, he's an LLC. He said, I've got to take care of myself, and that's completely understandable. And you've got a team like Scotland with the Hastings injury, and all of a sudden, he's kicking a penalty to beat us in the Six Nations or in the World Cup. But and he has to take that chance. Whereas if we say to him, look, go anywhere, we'll keep you here. You get first team ball. We'll pay a quarter of his salary, so the club's going to take him, and he comes back and forth that way. We're keeping control without giving a player away. I'm phrasing that horrifically, but we are keeping someone in our ecosystem. Now the problem is, if 2 years down the line Healy's not picked, Healy never gets a tracksuit, he will then go anywhere. But I think at least we should have tried this to keep him in, because in his case, he's a class player that we could always use.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely different ways of looking at it. And I like the way this article is, the headline. It talks about the broader topic, because every time one of these players leaves, you hear a lot of opinion from within the bubble of that province that he's going from, and then you also have we have a wider talk discussion from the Irish bubble and stuff. But you have to look at the game as a whole, and it's all about. I mean, rugby is about playing test rugby. That's what these players want to do. And the rules have changed in such a way that players like, we're talking about Ben Healy now, it could be John Cooney next week. There's other players as well that qualify under this new rule, which means that you can, even if you've already played for one test country, if you stop playing for a certain amount of time, you can pick another nation. And that's what this is all about. And if players have this opportunity, they've got to weigh up the options. But from Irish rugby's point of view, you've got to look ahead immediately for the next year or so and say, well, these are the players I'm going with for Ireland. We'd love to keep, if we have 5, 6, 7, 8 different options for halfback. We can't guarantee to hold on to all of them. It's just simple. As much as we'd want to keep them in the Irish system and have control over them, it's just not possible, because there's a wider rugby world out there. There's other opportunities. So some players are have the fortune to be able to play for 2 countries, and if they're offered that, and I'd say, I don't know anything about the deal, but I'd say he at least has a guarantee to be called up to the next Scottish squad to train with them. He wouldn't have left without at least some kind of guarantee. He won't be guaranteed to be picked, but he'll definitely train with them. So if he knows that's there for him, it just so happens that right now he's playing well for Munster as well, which puts him more in the spotlight, makes it more look like, oh, we can't let him go. He just won us the game last week. He's after winning us another game this week, and all this is going on. So we need to, if we're going to talk about it, we need to talk about the broad topic of the opportunities within rugby and test rugby as a whole, plus the realities of Irish rugby and how we only have 4 teams. We can only really afford to have 4 teams, and there's only so many we can hold on in each position.
Yeah, spot on. And it's just because Healy is the newest one. There was talk of Cooney a couple of weeks ago, which has died down. Now it all comes down to, in the Healy case, he had a chat with Farrell and he had a chat with the Scottish coach, and it was night and day, the conversations he had. So, like, if the coach doesn't want him, that's a bit harsh in phraseology. I'm sure he phrased it better. But if he said, you're number 6 in line, there's no way he can stay. So, it's all good in terms of kind of, we have a lot of 10s and things like that. We have let him go now. So we have washed our hands of a guy who, like you say, is still young. We can use him in the next World Cup. We can use him next week, but we've washed our hands with him. So it's, I think we need to figure out how to keep these people in our system.
Yep. Rich?
Yeah, it's, just agreeing with what you guys have said. It's a tricky one, isn't it? It's finding the right balance. But I think that paramount is keeping them interested and keeping them in the fold, because otherwise it's going to be a brain drain. Nobody wants a brain drain. Yeah. Just speak to the South Sea Islanders. they all end up in either New Zealand or Australia, when, you know, you could have extremely powerful Samoan, Fijian, what have you sides. But of course, they, you know, these are human beings, and they have their aspirations, they have their ambitions in life, and you know, and also securing their futures in life. And you know, you cannot blame them for it. What you need to do is create a situation where they are enabled to be able to practice the sport that they're in within the boundaries of the union that they should be representing in reality.
Yeah, and hopefully, like you say, you talk about maybe letting them go abroad to play, and with the option of still playing Test rugby and things like that. We keep hearing that World Rugby are working on things like limited player minutes across the board throughout the calendar year, which would hopefully limit their being overused when they go to places like the top 14, and also changing the calendar around to make it make more sense, so that there's not this chopping and changing going back and forth between club teams and provincial club teams and test teams. And if they can sort out that calendar, maybe that can help that as well, so we can afford to let people go away and stuff.
You know, the only thing I would say to that is, and I hark back to a conversation I had with Simon Shaw. You'll remember Simon Shaw, I presume, when he used to play for Toulon, and he came over to Jib for one of our annual dinners, and I was lucky enough to sit next to him. Really nice fella, and he was saying that the French presidents of clubs treat them like chattel. They are commodities to be abused, used, disposed of as they see fit. I don't think there has been a change of attitude in the top 14.
Yeah.
So World Rugby has a fight on its hands if that's what they're intending to do.
Well, yeah, like when I say they say they're doing it and we haven't heard from them yet, I'd say that is the crux of why it hasn't. Those French team sugar daddies are definitely the stumbling block there. But anyway, hopefully they'll be able to sort something out soon, and we'll be able to come up with a solution.